Welcome to the RouterGods Battlecard. So this is a pretty exciting one. Some of you are going through some interviews right now. Maybe you have some interviews in the future. And this is a cool tool, one pager that's going to help you alleviate a lot of the anxiety that you have for those interviews. It's not going to have all the answers for you, but I think it will help in about 80% of the cases. And we'll talk about the cases where it does not help. So our agenda for today, about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on how many questions and stuff like that. And definitely expect you guys to ask questions. I've got the chat window up on another computer so I can see questions. So that shouldn't be a problem answering. We're going to be going through 5 parts. We've got the overview, what is the battle card, where it's worked, what's the purpose, that type of stuff. We're going to set some expectations, what the battle card does and doesn't do, because some people may be expecting a one sheet to have like all the answers for, let's say, if you're going into a programming interview. Those tend to be a lot different. This is not going to really help for a programming interview. It's meant for other types of interviews. We'll go over the sections of the battle card, and as you could already see if you're kind of looking through it, you can see it's color coded. There's multiple rows and multiple columns. We'll go through what all these mean. Then we're going to go into using the battle card itself, using them in a phone interview. How are you supposed to do it? How would you be using this in an in-person interview? And just to give you a little preview, you would be using it as a review while you're sitting in the parking lot, while you're sitting in the lobby, just to refresh your memory. And it also helps you as you're filling it out, fill out the information, learn more about the company, learn more about yourself, and reduce stress. That's the main thing, is to reduce stress during the interview. And then what we'll do is we'll walk through creating a battle card, filling out the battle card for a sample job. So we'll go to dice.com. Actually, maybe I'll just load it up right now. We'll go to dice.com, we'll pick Los Angeles, and there's a DICE career fair in January 14th. Pretty cool. So January 14th, DICE career fair, LA. So we will pick a company, LegalZoom. And let's see if LegalZoom is looking for a network engineer. I'm pretty sure they are. Senior network engineer. They're in Glendale. They're a couple floors down from us in our 101 North brand. They're looking for people. So we're going to pretend that we've got an interview with LegalZoom coming up. How would we use this battle card for that? Okay, so Abram says, is your battle card form available? Yes, I just pasted the link in the Slack room. So if you're in the Slack room, you should see that link. And it looks like you're not logged into the Slack room. So if you log in the Slack room, you'll see it. And if not, I'll send out a link through email later. The overview. What is the battle card? The battle card is kind of like a checklist. I'm sure some of you guys may have heard about a job interview checklist. So before you interview, make sure you know who the person's name is. Make sure you have a couple stories. Make sure you know your job history, stuff like that. That's kind of the basic checklist that you've probably seen out there. This is a little bit different. This is a one-sheeter where I've taken all of the questions that I have gotten from job interviews. I've kind of thought them out and tried to group them up into logical categories. So what you've seen here, I know we're skipping ahead to sections and stuff, but what you see here is the color coding. Up here we have gray, we've got green, then down here we've got yellow, and then red. Generally, the green section right here pertains to job stuff. So here you would be putting in the job posting. So what are they looking for? How many years of experience? What kind of skills are they looking for? So on and so forth. Here is you're putting your previous job history, and you're going to be matching the job history with the job posting. So let's say, for example, they're looking for, they're saying experience with Python, just to throw it out there. And then in your job history, you had 2 years experience at some hosting provider, I'll just say HP, hosting provider, doing Python, doing that. So, when they ask, okay, we're asking for Python. Well, I've got 2 years experience at HP. I was doing some Linux stuff. I was doing some SDN. I was doing some text extraction, blah, 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 blah. So this stuff matches. Down here, this is kind of like our knowledge section. Education, courses, certs. This would be formal education. This would be just some books that you've read, not necessarily for school, but just regular book reading. And then right here, courses, certs, and languages. This is kind of like the stuff you do on your own time. So languages could be Python, PHP, C++, certs, of course, CCNA, CCNP, courses, stuff like that. And then down here in the red section, you may be thinking, oh, this is kind of like the miscellaneous section, like where have you lived, where have you traveled, do you have some cool stories to talk about? Because sometimes you'll see a lot times in interviews, they're going to ask you for a funny, tell me a funny story, tell me a story where you accomplished something, tell me a story where you had to show some leadership, technical ability, you had to learn something crazy. Stuff like that. So, a lot of times people don't think about those, and it kind of comes up. You're in the heat of the moment, you're stressed out, you're trying to remember, and you just kind of sit there and go, "Oh," So we don't want that to happen. And then projects, hobbies. This is kind of like the catch-all down here in the left. Is this part right here is like the time to shine type thing. This is, you have cool home lab you want to talk about. You do some volunteer work. Maybe you volunteer for, a veterans association at an airport, something like that. Right? And we'll go over this stuff in more detail. But this is how it looks like. I keep it very simple, color coded, and you're going to be basically, this serves as the center where you're going to start off at, is the job posting. The job posting is what they want. So if it's for LegalZoom, this is what LegalZoom wants. This is their quote unquote ideal candidate, right? And then from in here, you're branching out and answering what LegalZoom wants with your job history, with your education, with your courses, certs, and languages. All of this matches back to what LegalZoom wants. And then if you have appropriate hobbies, all this other stuff as well. Now this gray section is kind of the research section. Who are you interviewing? This is the who here, the important people. Is it the CIO? Is it the CISO? Are you looking through the LinkedIn? Do you know how to pronounce the name? That could be very important. Do you know the gender of the person? Don't assume that because the name looks like a woman's name that it's necessarily a woman. I will give you a very good example. Nico. So there was a situation where I met someone named Nico, or I haven't actually met them yet in person, but it's been through email, and I assumed that it was a guy because I've never seen the name Nico before. So if you have, then you probably know it's usually a woman, but don't make that assumption. It could end out badly for you. And then there's some other stuff that we'll talk about. Okay, so that's just a general overview of that battle card. Now, it's like a checklist, but better, color-coded. It's the link is on the Slack channel right now. And so Michael Vensky says, Slack or chat room? Slack is the chat room. The Slack and chat room is the same thing. Now, when I say paste it into chat, then I'm pasting it into the WebEx chat. Okay. Now, where has this been battle tested? It's been battle tested for my interview at Rapid7. This completed battle card itself has worked at Rapid7, salary negotiations, that type of stuff, the interviews, and has worked at Cisco. And it's actually the same. I used the same battle card when I interviewed at Cisco Irvine and also at Cisco Glendale. So it seemed to work. Okay, let's set some expectations here. This is not meant to give you a word for word thing for the interview. So, they're asking a specific question, and you're going to be, don't expect to be just reading off of this because I don't know about you, but you can probably tell when someone's reading from a script or reading from a book. I mean, I don't know if you can, but I certainly can. So, if someone's speech is too prepared, it doesn't sound right. So, for let's say stories down here, these are common themes like a funny story, rising to the challenge. I'm not going to be putting in the exact word for word of the story. I've got certain stories that I could pull from. I can say, there's the CHP story, there's the Libya story, there's the Thailand shooting, Thailand riots, Bangkok riots. So it just serves as a visual reminder that I can pull four, 3 or 4 stories about rising to the challenge, learning something. You know, I could say, okay, learning about Linux. I could say, a website, video creation, YouTube, stuff like that. So it's not going to be a word for word, a one-to-one word for word answer. So don't expect this battle card to do that for you. It also doesn't cover the before and after interview steps. So the before stuff like verifying where the interview place is, the after steps like sending a thank you note, stuff like that, what to wear, doesn't cover that because we've covered that in other places. I mean, you could make a battle card that covers everything before, during, and after, but I don't think we're going to fit that on one page. Probably be 3 pages, 4 pages. It would probably be pretty insane. This battle card is for the interview itself, the actual interview, and also right before as a last minute review. All right. So in the chat window right there, yes, you do take. So Adrian says, "Do you take the battle card in with you?" I do. Now you may be thinking, "What if they see it?" Fine, they see it. You show it to them. Hey, this is how I prepared for this interview. 9 out of 10 times, I think they should be okay with that. Okay, so in the chat window right there, how many of you have gone into interview and they have asked a very simple question? Something as simple as, "Hey, what was the last book you read?" Or "What are your hobbies?" Or something really simple, something you should know off the top of your head, but because you were so nervous, you froze. Has anyone experienced that? So it looked like someone had a mic open. Yeah, so people are saying, yep, that's happened to them. So we're going to go through the sections of this battle card. You're going to be filling, or I'll do it. We'll fill it out as a test for you guys to see how I use it. But as we go through these sections, you're going to see that these are answering hopefully 80 to 90% of the questions that you would get on a regular interview. So as we go through the top, we'll start in the gray section right here. This is the research that you're going to be doing on the company, basically. First section right here, who are you interviewing with, right? Now, in some cases, you'll know one person and they'll drag in 2 other people. So in cases like that, you're not going to have full information of, let's say, all 3 people. You may only know one. So that's fine. I mean, you do what you can. But if you do know all the parties beforehand, then what you want to do is you want to look up their LinkedIn. You want to know how to pronounce their names, you want to know their genders, and you want to pick out 1 to 2 facts that are interesting about their background. So for example, I also used this battle card when I interviewed at Panda. So at Panda, one of the people who interviewed me towards the end had a JD. Now, for those of you who know what a JD is, it's a Juris Doctor. They went to law school. They graduated from law school. And I asked the person about that. It's like, hey, I looked at your LinkedIn. I saw that you got the JD from this particular school. How was the program? Would you recommend it? Something like that. Another thing I look for is military. You know, so those of you who are former or current military, you know this as well. So it's a point of connection. Oh, you were in the Marines, I was in the Marines. You were in the Air Force, I was in the Air Force. You were in Iraq, I was in Iraq. Stuff like that is a point of connection. Schools. If you went to the same schools, UCLA, UC Riverside, USC, that type of stuff. So pick out certain things that are interesting. Also, previous companies, because there is a chance that you may have worked at the same company but just in different departments. Oh yeah, I worked at Verizon too. What division were you in? That type of stuff. All right, so this is you're doing your research on the people who are interviewing you, right? Because I guarantee you that if you get nervous very easily, it's very easy to forget the names of people, even if it's a very simple name. Um, Also, yeah, I've been in interviews where one person, his name was Rick, another person is Rich, right? Dude, the brain power that you have to expend not to mix that up is pretty difficult. So, if I hadn't done the battle card, it would have been pretty tough, right? Okay. Okay, so that's researching the person. You're looking at their LinkedIn, how to pronounce their name, their gender. You're looking for some things that are common between you and them. In this next section here is kind of you're going to put a few words about your elevator pitch. Your elevator pitch is kind of like that 30 to 60 second, when they say like, "Hey, tell me about yourself. Tell us about yourself." type of deal, or "Why should we hire you?" That so it's pretty bad if they say, "Tell us about yourself," and you say, "Well, you just kind of fumble through it." So one really easy way to do any elevator pitch is to do the timeline. You could do it with the timeline method. Timeline method: past, present, future. So you just mentally walk through your history. All right. So you could say, in the past, I went to, I'll just use my example. Went to UCLA, did, studied French, comp sci, then went to the police academy, then got a AA in administration of justice from San Bernardino Valley College. Go through all this. So that's the past stuff. In the past, I worked at these companies. 3 years, Panda Restaurant Group, this company, hosting provider, Tom's Hardware, whatever. Currently, I work here. Currently, I'm looking for this. And in the future, I'm enrolled in this course. I plan to get CCIE, blah, 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 right? So that's the timeline method of the elevator pitch. Past, present, future, right? Very easy stuff. Another way you could do it is, well, you've got your battle card in front of you. You could do it by job. Okay, so you could pick your last 3 jobs. Okay, last job I did this. Before that, I was working here doing that, and 3 jobs ago I was working here. Where I went to school here. I majored in this, and I learned this. And my hobbies are blah 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 blah. Right. So you could do it that way. But I like the timeline way because the timeline way is it just makes sense to go past, present, future for me. Right? And you're not going to write out the whole elevator pitch. You're going to just put in keywords. You could put in, UCLA. You could put in AA, Administration of Justice. You could put in Panda, right? And then you fill in the words because it's going to sound more natural. How much time for an elevator pitch? 30 to 60 seconds. You may not even get a chance to do the elevator pitch. Sometimes they never ask you, tell us about yourself, but just be prepared for that. Then what we have is we've got name dropping and references. If you know someone at the company, they say, "Hey, this guy, my friend Aaron referred me to the, he's working as a network engineer here. He referred me to the job," or "I was referred to you guys by so and so." So always remember who referred you, because it's going to be, it only helps. It only helps. Now, how many of you have been asked? Well, how many of you have been asked, how far do you live from the office? Are you willing to drive to certain locations? Are you know, it looks like your home is kind of far away. You're living in Redlands and our office is in Glendale. Are you willing to drive here every day? Stuff like that. How many of you have been asked that? Right? So expect this question to come up more often. More people are asking this, and you should have some type of decent response to that. Um, you know, they're very used to hearing, "Well, I'll just deal with the traffic." You know, nah, that's not really a good answer, right? So I was asked this for Cisco, and I anticipated it. So yes, currently I live in Redlands. It's approximately 60 something, 70 something miles from Glendale. I know it's going to take this long to travel. Great thing about Cisco is you guys allow for remote working, but what I plan to do is within 1.5 to 2 months after everything gets settled, I'm going to be moving to somewhere closer, and I've done that, so I've followed through with that plan. So what they want to see is you acknowledge the problem, or you acknowledge there could be a problem, uh, and then you have a plan to solve it, type of deal, right? So you're ready for that question. And then over here in the upper right hand corner is company research. Know what the company does. I mean, it's kind of horrible to interview candidates and they don't even know what Cisco does. It's like, really? It's pretty bad. All right, so know what the company does, know like some general product or service lines. You don't have to know everything. It's not expected that you know every product, but some general stuff. Some recent press releases, acquisitions. Say, hey, I read in the newspaper that your company recently bought this company. What was the thinking behind that? Are you guys excited? How's the structure going to work? With their employees and your employees. So at least they know you're keeping up on top events or current events. And I've said this before, if the company is publicly traded, you need to look at their 10K form, which is the SEC 10K form. It's going to have so much detail into what that company does and the financials and stuff like that. Now, if you guys are applying for a non-profit company, uh, something like a World Vision, I don't know, like a church, some type of foundation, some type of nonprofit, right? The 501c, I think, for according to the IRS, you need to be looking at a form. I think it's a form 900 or a 990. I think it's a 900. 900, 990, 910, something like that. So it's a form that nonprofits have to fill out every year, and it has information about donors, what they do, where they get most of their money, how much do they spend for advertising, stuff like that, challenges. So it's a very, very important form to look at. And then what you want to do is you want to look at it from year to year. So you'll pull it up for like 2014, 2013, kind of take a look at the trends. And so you can speak to it and you can say, well, I saw that in 2012 you guys did this, in 2013 you did this, in 2014 you did this, and the trend is basically up. Do you anticipate, keeping that trend? What are the challenges to keeping that growth level? So it shows that you are researching the company. Just in case they ask, like, I'm sure some of you may have gotten in your interviews, what do you know about us? What do you think we do? What do you know about Cisco, or what do you know about this position? That's going to be this section right here, right? So that's this first section right here, the gray section. This is research into them. This is your elevator pitch, the home location. This is kind of like a hodgepodge type of thing up here, but it answers a lot of questions and also gets rid of the whole name dropping thing right here. So Mark is saying most IT people haven't done the research financial statements of the company of the last 2 or 3 years. Correct. It's pretty cool when you get a candidate that actually researches finances and other stuff other than tech for a company. So the battle card is not in Hackpad. The battle card is pasted into the Slack room, the general room of Slack. Well, that's so. Mark is saying I meant for people already employed. So that's also true. If you're working for a company, you should be very interested in researching the finances of that company because that company is paying your bills. Yes, and Abram says many companies will have a stockholders conference call, which is good. You definitely should listen to those. Sometimes they're boring, but they can have some interesting nuggets of information. Once you have a publicly traded company, you're very you are restricted a lot of times in what you can say, but more importantly, when you can say it. There are times when you are prevented from saying certain things so you don't unduly influence the stock price. So I think it's called a quiet period. So it gets a little bit strange when you're a publicly traded company. Okay, so the second section right here is the meat of this because this is the largest one, and this is the most important, the job stuff. So green means job because I just thought, well, you're going to be making money, so we'll make it green. So the most important part is to have their job posting there. So sometimes the job postings are humongous. You may not be able to fit everything verbatim, but take bits and pieces, programming languages, experience, technologies, certifications. You're going to be popping that in here. This is going to serve as your jumping off point for the rest of the battle card. This is what you're going to refer to because I've seen interviewees they've got great job history, +1, great job history, great job ambitions, awesome education, awesome hobbies. I mean, you like them, everything's good, but none of it was relevant to this guy, the job posting right here. So just awesome, but not awesome for this job, right? So you want to map everything to what they want. And we'll be doing that a little bit later using LegalZoom as a template. Okay, for your job history, you're gonna go from most recent. So recent is up here to most in the past. And if you have several jobs, you don't need to put everything in, but you're going to put the relevant stuff. So if you're doing stuff for, you're doing a network engineer, network engineer for LegalZoom, right? And let's say your first couple jobs down here was a security guard. And don't laugh, that has served a lot of people well to make extra money. I was a security guard, guard card, baton card, pepper spray card, gun card, all that good stuff. And am I going to put that in there? No. I mean, if they ask, tell us about all your jobs. I may put that, but that is not relevant over here. They're probably going to want to see, the Panda job, the VPLS job, stuff that's relevant for the network engineer. And you're going to put whatever, let's say they want Linux. So whatever job you did Linux at, this was the Linux part. Do they have, they're looking for someone who can do budgets. And so maybe you did budgets over here. So you were answering one-to-one what they want. So you want this, I have this. You want B, I have this. You want C, I've got this. Right? So these two go hand in hand. Let me just stop for a couple seconds for questions. So Adrian says, is this the same for small and large businesses? Yes. I would use the same. Well, the battle card structure is the same for no matter what company you go to. How you fill it out is going to be different. And Jermaine says, if I was interviewing someone and they brought this card filled out, I would be impressed. Yep, that's just like the previous person asked. Do I bring this in? Sure, bring it in. Why not? Don't leave it in the car. Bring it in while you're sitting down. And here's typically how I see it. Let me just pull out Notepad. And I'm sure many of you will be very familiar with this. Okay, let's draw it out. All right, you walk into a lobby. The receptionist is over here. You tell them that you're here for an interview. You sit at these seats over here, and let's say there's the hallway and there's the office that you're supposed to be interviewing at. There's table, whatever, right? That actually looks like interrogation room, but you get the picture, right? So you come in. Hopefully, you come in like 10 minutes early, 5 minutes early. You sit down right here. You're in your freaking suit. You're fidgeting, and employers are walking back and forth. They're looking at you and they're kind of feeling sorry for you because it's like, dude, the guy's interviewing. They know it. People who are interviewing there. They're wearing a suit. Their foot is tapping, and they're just like staring into space or whatever. So if you had this battle card, you would be reviewing the battle card, going over your education, going over your experience, your job history, looking over the company, and if they see the battle card, no big deal. Say, hey, this is how I'm prepared. This is how I'm, how I cope with the being nervous in the interview. This is how I alleviate that. And, you know, getting a job here is important. So I decided to put in the 2 hours or whatever it took to fill this out. It's a win. Okay, we've got some more questions here. Suppose they ask for the universe but only want a small part. Suppose they ask for the universe but only want a small part. You're probably gonna have to if they want a small part of that list, half of that list, the whole list, they could actually want the whole list. But if you match half of that, then you say you match half of it, or you match this, this, and this. So if they say, I want these 10 things, boom, 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 10, right? And you've got six of them, 1 through 6. Then you match it up with the six and you go from there. You can't go based on, well, crap, they want 10, I've got 6, I'm done, right? Because everyone else could maybe match 2 things or 1 thing, or maybe they weren't prepared for the interview, or there's a million things that could happen in a job interview process. So you can only do what is in your control. You can only control everything that your preparation. You can't really control what they want. Now, if they want 10, let's say they want a 4-year degree in comp sci. How many of you have seen this stupid? Okay, this I can argue is a stupid requirement. A 4-year degree in comp sci. If you're looking for an IT person, this is kind of a worthless degree. Now, you can't just straight out say that requirement is bullcrap, because maybe the guy in front of you is the guy who wrote the requirement. What you have to say is, okay, now if they don't bring it up, don't bring it up. But if they do, what you're going to say is, well, yeah, I've got, let's say 8 years. I'm just riffing here. So I've got 8 years of expanding responsibilities as a network engineer. I've done budgets. I've done this. I think it more than compensates for the 4-year degree. I've learned programming myself. Here's my GitHub link. I mean, you do everything that you can do to say, okay, my experience in IT more than compensates for that 4-year degree. Right? I've got a proven track record. That's what you go with. Okay, we've got some other questions here. be ready to answer when you don't have a direct match. Yep, that's true. Uh, from Justin, do you bring in a folder with the battle card? You should always have a pad folio with you. A pad folio with copies of your resume, battle card, a pen, pad of paper, that type of stuff. Okay. Okay, so job posting we've done, job history we've done, job ambitions. Right? This is to help answer those questions. Where do you see yourself in 3 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Stuff like that. So the way you would look at this is, are you interested in some type of management position? Are you interested in a different department? Are you interested in helping out a certain vertical? Vertical meaning, do you want to sell, or do you want to do IT for healthcare? Do you want to do IT for legal? God help you if you want to do IT for legal. But do you want to do IT for large companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, gigantic companies, SpaceX, stuff like that? Which department do you want to work for? Do you want to go into the IT for the accounting department? Do you want to go data center, collaboration? Do you have management aspirations? I wouldn't necessarily say management. I would say leadership. Big difference between management and leadership. Some type of leadership position, right? But you want to always preface any of that with basically saying, well, for the first year or two, or the first, when I first get started, I want to be the best employee for this job that I can be, and then we can reassess in year two or year three, or something like that as we go down the lines. Right? It's okay to have ambition right here. If a company you're interviewing with is afraid of hiring someone who says they have management aspirations, you probably shouldn't be interviewing at that company. Right? Companies should be continuously grooming for up and coming managers. And David has a good comment. One of the questions he gets is, walk me through a day in this job. What does it look like? That's a pretty good question to ask the interviewer. Okay, so questions about this section right here, the job section. What do they want? So that's what they want. That's what you have. That's what you can offer. And then this is, looking towards the future, your job ambitions. Okay, next section, pretty easy. This is going to be the yellow, maybe you could call it the gold section. This is knowledge, what you know. So knowledge, this is, you could say the green part is experience. Experience, knowledge, and then this is like, I call this is you right here. This is what makes you you. Projects, hobbies, other stuff. Now, for the knowledge section, we've got your formal education. Formal education is stuff like you have a BA in philosophy, which is completely fine. No problem with having a BA in philosophy from, I don't know, wherever. Stanford. I don't know if Stanford even offers a BA in philosophy, but let's say you do, right? BA in philosophy, Stanford. If your GPA is relevant, if it's high, then you might talk about it, but I probably wouldn't. Courses you took, your majors, stuff like that. That's your formal education. Now, as you continue on with your life, once you get past 30 years old, 40 years old, this formal education part really becomes not that relevant anymore. They're asking you more about this stuff versus the education part, but you never know. Then what you've got is courses, stuff that you've done on your own, languages that you've done on your own. So here, if you've taken computer science and you took C++ classes, I would put that there. So Stanford, I took C++ classes, I did these projects, so on and so forth. And then when you get over here if they ask you, okay, so you took C++, what other stuff have you done? And then you could say, well, on my own, I taught myself Python. On my own, I taught myself, what, I don't know, SDN, blah, blah, whatever you can rattle off. And then I achieved my CCNA, you know, stuff like that. Right? This is the stuff that you're doing on your own time. Languages and stuff like that. Yeah, if you speak another language, let's say you speak Spanish or uh, Hebrew, Hindi, whatever, then I would definitely chuck that out there if it makes sense in that particular job. If it's a multinational company, definitely throw in the languages that you speak. Now, if you're learning a language, let's say you belong to a meetup group, they have meetup groups that teach you Japanese, Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese, and some of these meetups are taught by the actual professors at the local schools. They're just doing it for cheap. The Japanese one is especially good. Say, hey, I belong to a Japanese meetup group. Every week, I meet once a week. We practice Japanese speech. Last week, we learned how to say these words, and hopefully, have some type of goal that, okay, I hope in 1 year I'm going to be taking the 8th grade proficiency. There's a certain test out there, 8th grade proficiency test or whatever it's called. So that second column there, very important. It's what you're studying yourself, and then some books, right? What are some recent books you have read? Okay, questions about the education row right there. So Abram asks, what, no music? No, you could put music. I've never been asked what music I like. Now, if you play an instrument, I would probably put that down here. That might be a good place to put it. Generally, I found 1 out of 4 people play an instrument. So the odds are pretty good if you're interviewing with 4 people and you play an instrument, chances are one of those 4 will also play an instrument. Okay, continue on. This last section right here, this is the fun one. I like this part. Where have you traveled? Where have you lived? This is pretty cool. I've been asked that, like to go to Asia. I've lived in these countries for almost 2 years. I've traveled here, been to Africa, been to Libya, been to Singapore, Malaysia, blah 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 blah, Japan, all these countries, right? It's pretty cool. You need to have several stories, rising to a challenge, some type of funny story, some type of story where you've been thrown out of your comfort zone. Some examples might be if you've ever skydived. I think you're freaking nuts, but that's a pretty good out of the comfort zone type of story to talk about. At Cisco, we recently interviewed for a certain position, and one of the questions asked was, "What is your biggest regret?" Which I've never heard that question before, but I think that's a pretty good question. Your biggest regret, whether it's not doing something, could be a divorce. Just don't make it too heavy. But your biggest regret, and maybe on the flip side of that, what's something that you've done that's brought you the most happiness or something like that. Generally, stuff like this is something usually pertaining to family, which is completely fine and normal. And then projects, hobbies, games, your home lab, a volunteer, what volunteer stuff. This is like the miscellaneous stuff, that's something cool that you do that makes you different. If you are a championship Rubik's Cube player, then you're a championship Rubik's Cube player. If you are a grandmaster at chess, grandmaster at chess. If you teach tennis, you teach tennis. If you are a FAA ground instructor, you're an FAA ground instructor. If you're a CFI, even better, a certified flight instructor. That's pretty cool stuff, right? So it's something that makes you different, because you can be, theoretically, when you compare yourself to all the other candidates in this section right here, you could be neck and neck, right? Your job history may be very similar. You both worked as network engineers for 2 years. You both have kind of like the same ambitions, similar schooling. Maybe one person went to UCLA, one person went to, let's say, USC, and the company says, okay, that's pretty comparable. You both got comp sci. You both kind of took the same. You both are CCNP, so you're both kind of equal. You're both fairly likable. And now maybe this part right here, the projects, the hobbies, will put you over the top. I've got a project. I've got a project on GitHub, SourceForge. I maintain this in the Linux kernel. I fly drones. I do this. I build this. I volunteer every weekend here. Food bank, stuff like that. Now it's got to be true. You don't just throw out I volunteer here and you don't actually volunteer there, because if you get caught and one of the interviewers actually works at that food bank, you are completely dead. I mean, it's you're done for. So this part right here, never underestimate this part, the hobbies, projects, all that, because this actually could put you over the top. Someone has an open mic. Okay, so guys, just to give you a little instruction on how WebEx works, if you look at the participants list, you will see that there's a microphone symbol, and right now everyone's microphone should be clicked red. That means you're muted. So, just remember that for the future. Okay, so let's go through some of these questions here. Eric says the regret question is really disturbing. If you are disturbed with talking about that in front of an interview panel, they're going to have concerns about you working and interacting in a group and making your feelings known. So, for example, I'm not going to say whether they're right or wrong. If you're going to be working in a team, communication is going to be number one. And if you hold things back, if you harbor, you think something should be done, or you think that decision sucks and you just hold it in, that's going to have long-term repercussions. So that's probably where they're going with the regret thing. They also just want to ask you a human question, like, what's your biggest regret, right? And if you say like I have no regrets, it's like, really, so stuff like that. Okay, so questions regarding family are illegal. No, they're not, actually. There are. So this is a misconception. The misconception is certain questions are illegal. They're only illegal if they're used as part of the hiring decision. So you got to be very careful about that. And David has a good comment with regards to career, choosing money over mental health and happiness. Yeah, quality of life, right? That's a common one. Do you make money, or do you want free time? Finding a job that can cater to both. Okay, so that's going over the different sections. Let's actually talk about how to use it. Okay, so for a phone interview, assuming that you have this filled out, you filled this out like the week before, a couple days before, you're in a phone interview. Now, how many of you have done a phone interview in your car? You're sitting in the parking lot in your car. Right? Perfect place to do a job interview is in your car. Right? Because what you can do is you can take this battle card and you could take a piece of tape and tape it to your windshield, or you could tape it to your rear view mirror, right? So you can see it. That way, when they're asking you questions, you can kind of look at this. It'll give you a point of reference, and you're not they don't hear the paper shuffling or whatever. Like it's there, right? So that's how I use it in a phone interview if you're doing it in your car. Now, if you're not in your car, you're somewhere else, just have it on a table or whatever, have it on a screen. Just be very, very careful if you're in a phone interview with keyboards, because if you start typing, if you have to click something like a mouse, If you don't have a silent mouse, they're going to hear this over the phone, and they're going to think, oh, he's googling for the answer or something like that. It just, or they're thinking you are disconnected, you're not paying attention to the interview. So just keep that in mind. Now, for an actual job interview, where you have to actually walk in, this serves as a last minute preparation. Take it with you. You're sitting in your car, you've arrived 15 minutes early, do a quick once over, look through the battle card, what you have filled out, just to refresh your memory. Bring it in with you in your Padfolio while you're sitting in the lobby. You're probably going to have, usually, they make you sweat it out a couple minutes, 5 minutes or whatever. It could also be, if they're doing a lot of job interviews, the one before is running over. So it could be, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Heck, sometimes they forget about you. I've had a time when I was sitting there and I'm like, I think they forgot about me, right? So that happens too, right? So you're just use that time to review that battle card, and yes, take it with you. If they ask about it, show them, and hopefully you did a good job with the battle card, and you can use this to impress them about your preparation. Okay, just looking at the questions there. How do you answer the stock questions? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Be honest. I mean, yeah, it's like, just be honest. That's a very easy question for me to answer because I always answer honestly. Uh, you know, so I want to still be in a technical position. It's probably not going to be network engineer. I want to get more into data center. If you want to talk about earnings or you know challenges, I want to be going for this. I want to, you know, just be honest with it. James says I had to do an interview while driving. Yeah, that's not good. I don't. Yeah, that's not good. Another interview I hate. I hate interviews while eating. The meal interview, lunch. Let's interview over lunch or let's interview over dinner. Fuck that. Coffee's okay. Coffee's fine. Just drinking something is not bad. But when you're trying to interview and eat, it's not a good time. I do not recommend it. It's bad. Okay, questions up till this point before we get into kind of like our mock filling out of this card. Okay, let's do this. So we're going to pretend that we're going to fill this out. We're going to walk through this. We're going to apply for a LegalZoom network engineer. I'll paste the link inside of the chat window here so you can kind of see this job posting if you so desire. You don't need to. So let's just kind of look through their job posting. They're looking for a network engineer. This is in Glendale. Look at this. Right off the bat, what are they saying here? Telecommuting not available. Boom, right there. So they're saying you've got to be in Glendale. Okay. This is a senior network engineer. Highest levels of uptime. Okay. So right there, they're giving you a hint. Highest levels of uptime to support millions of users. Now, hopefully you know what LegalZoom is, but if you don't, you'd be looking up the LegalZoom website. They provide like forms, legal forms, stuff like that. Designing, supporting network infrastructure, 24/7, 365 site operations. I know a candidate, fast-paced, multitasking. Okay, these are the buzzwords, right? Fast-paced, multitasking, work independent. This is work independent or as part of a project team. Okay, so let's just kind of take this part, boom, put it into our battle card. It's probably going to overrun everything here, so that's fine. Okay, so this is how I do it. I'm going to make it 8 point just so it fits here. I know it's microscopic here. So I'm going to just pick out the keywords. Highest levels of uptime. Millions of users. Designing. Okay, design and support. High availability, security. Ah, so you guys can see what I'm doing here, right? I'm just kind of looking here. Fast-paced environment. Okay, fast-paced environment. I'm going to change the font to larger in just a second. Okay, so independent or as part of a team, research recommendations, scalability, performance, redundancy. Okay, I'll just have redundancy here. Okay. Now, if we had unlimited time, I'd be doing it full bore, but these are kind of the words I picked that seem relevant. Make it 12 point. Okay, so you can see highest levels of uptime, millions of users, designing and supporting, uh, fast-paced, security, all that good stuff, right? So then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking through your past job history and you're going to say, okay, matches what matches this, what they're asking for. Highest levels of uptime. Okay, so worked at VPLS as a network engineer. Hosting provider. Thousands of customers. Actually, yeah, say thousands of customers. With websites. If their website goes down, they'll be screaming bloody murder. So, how, you did network engineer there, talked about how you maintained uptime. Millions of users. Now, if you haven't worked at a company that has millions of users, that's fine. That's okay, right? Now, if you were working previously at Disney, the Disney network, then yeah, okay, many users. It's a very big network. This you could talk about that, and you would fulfill. This would be a perfect match, but it would also look weird. It would look, why are you working at Disney now? You want to work for LegalZoom? Just in my opinion. But what you could say is, well, at my company, I was responsible for a website that's visited, I don't know, 500,000 times a month, 500,000 hits per month or something like that, or YouTube channel that gets this much, right? Design and support. So let's say at Panda, you designed the DR environment, right? And maybe you have a drawing of the DR environment. Get up and whiteboard it. So this is how I did it. We had the Phoenix location, we had the Rosemead location, we had two pairs here, we had two ASAs here, blah blah blah. Show how you designed it. Security stuff, right? Well, for Panda, we did Fortinet, we did the ASA, we had the AnyConnect, some words that help you remember those projects. Act independently or as part of the team. Okay, so independent work. So maybe you did some consulting work somewhere where you were independent. Part of the project team, maybe you were the team lead for the AnyConnect project, right? So you can see here that we are mapping things one to one there. Boom. Fast-paced environment. Maybe you have like a story about where things are going completely crazy and you had to prioritize, right? Okay, so that's how I would start it off. Okay, the interviewing portion, you figure out the name of the person. Let's say it's John Doe, whoever, right? John Doe, he's been working there for 8 years as their lead network engineer, and then you look through his previous jobs, and you see that he worked at this company that you also worked at. So you might say during the interview, "Hey, I noticed 5 years ago you worked at this company. I worked there too. How did you make the switch from working in this industry, or, that industry, into working for LegalZoom? What have been the major differences and the challenges? Stuff like that." If you know people working at LegalZoom, there you go. You're going to tailor your elevator pitch to LegalZoom. So, I know that you guys are a big company. You're heavy on web. You probably have a DR website. You probably use multiple multiple data centers where you have to serve out your website, some type of caching solution like Akamai to speed up things. Probably heavy into databases, store all that information. So then you craft your elevator pitch to match that. Now remember, they said no telecommuting. So they're in Glendale. You've got to answer if you can make it to Glendale within a reasonable time. So if you're in LA, not a big deal. It's okay. It's fine. But if you were living in Redlands, you got to come up with some type of story to answer that. Job ambitions. So the way to approach this with LegalZoom is I would look through the different departments of LegalZoom. I would look through the LinkedIn, kind of like follow the breadcrumbs of different projects and stuff. Maybe you're interested in looking more into the development side versus eventually get into SDN and stuff like that. So you might want to talk about that. Education. Maybe you've done some legal education. Maybe you've taken a couple legal courses and say, hey, so you realize how important the legal industry is because you've taken legal courses. You know that the law is sometimes very complicated, and you realize that LegalZoom's mission of simplifying the law and giving people forms that are easy to fill out is very important. You're 100% behind that. Maybe you've taken some courses in terms of like website design, redundancy, security, stuff like that, and that can match up. Recent books. Maybe you've read a book about law or something that can match up to what LegalZoom does. Right? So you can see how the job posting right here serves as your jumping off point to craft everything else. Does it take time? Absolutely, it takes time. But the whole process of filling this out will make you a much better candidate because you're going to know a hell of a lot more about yourself and the company you are applying for. Okay, let's look through this question. So does this help kind of going through how I would look at LegalZoom? Now, how many hours would I spend doing this? I would probably do 4 to 5 hours. It will probably take me 4 to 5 hours to really go through this, especially the 10K. This is going to be might be some pretty dry reading that may take the longest time, but yeah, about 5 hours. I think for my Cisco, when I filled this out for the Cisco interview, I probably spent 8 to 10 hours doing it. But when you're going for a really high paying job and some job that you're intending to stay for several years, it's a time investment that's well worth it. Okay, going through the questions. Do you have the battle card as a Word doc? I will. Right now it's just a PDF, but I'll upload the Word doc